Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ripple Intent Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kyle McCroskey, and with me, as always, is John Grant. John, please say hello.
Hey, listeners. Great to have you with us again.
Great indeed. As we continue finding and having conversations with Ripple Intent participants from around the country, we have an excellent guest today. But real quick about Ripple Intent. So we are a nonprofit organization that is out trying to help people become better people, better teammates, and better leaders. And we do that through various events like breakfast clubs and our annual symposium, which is coming up next year in Dallas. So if you're interested, please join us. But that's neither here nor there for today. Today, we have the pleasure of chatting with Cherie Dice, who is joining us. Welcome, Cherie. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, I'm Cherie Dice. I work with HDR Architecture. I lead our healthcare practice in Colorado. I've been in Colorado for about 21 years, and I've been with HDR about 6.
Awesome. And I can totally hear that Colorado accent coming through, so hopefully everyone else can as well.
I don't have an accent.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, yeah, thanks for being here. You've been a long-time supporter of Ripple Intent and come to a ton of our events and support your folks coming to our events. And we've chatted many, many times, and I really do appreciate you being here. And I'm looking forward to see where our conversation takes us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
what kind
so
of
let's
questions do you have for me today?
Well, let's start off with a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are. What's your story?
So I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I went to LSU, so that's probably why you think I have an accent, but I don't. I worked in Baton Rouge for a while, and then I moved to Dallas, and I worked there for 9 years, and then I moved to Colorado. I worked mostly in interior design before I took over the healthcare lead role. I think what's unique about my position and what I've done in the past is I have come up through the ranks, and I've also led teams. So I've been led and I've led. And I've always treated other people, coworkers, as clients. So in an interior design industry, when you're working in an architecture firm, your client is not only the person that hired you to do the work, but it's also your coworkers. So you've got to treat them like clients as well, so that they see you as a trusted resource and want to work with you again. So you get more work internally and externally.
So build on that for a second, because I think when we talk about clients or people hear the word clients, that can mean a variety of things. Give me an example.
Client would be someone that hires the firm to do work. So architecture work. It would be a healthcare system, or it would be an education system, or a corporate office client, something like that.
So what does that look like when you treat your employees like those organizations?
So if an architect or project manager would come up to you to ask you a question, if you treat them like a client and give them the same consideration that you would a client, you're going to have a better relationship with that person, in my opinion.
It's fantastic. It's a very fascinating dynamic. Give me an example of a difference between how you would treat somebody as an employee versus a client, or what's a unique one?
If you have an experienced architect that you're working with and they have a lot of questions, it's understanding how to be a resource to them to help them grow, as opposed to an annoying architect that constantly has questions. And why can't you find them out on your own?
Okay. Now I'm getting it.
Or an electrical engineer or contractor, or anybody really. You need to treat everybody with the same respect, whether they hired you to do the work or they didn't hire you to do the work.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Because, the way that you interact, the amount of patience, the amount of time, the amount of consideration,
Yes.
and the clarification that you provide from when you have an interaction with a client can certainly, all that can go away in other relationships if you don't bring that perspective to the relationship. All right, now I got it. Sorry, I was catching up.
So here at HDR, we have other business groups such as water and transportation and bridges. And so understanding that they are not just a coworker, they're just not someone who's part of HDR, but they are a potential client. And when I talk to them and putting on that hat instead of, this is just another, it's a different perspective.
Have you always been that way, or did you learn that along the way?
I learned it along the way because relationships are number one to me. It's my number one strength. I've learned that people respond better, projects go better. It's more fun when you do business this way.
It is a lot more fun when you do business that way, right? When you live that way. Was there a driver, right? That maybe it was just early in your career where things weren't that way that you decided, hey, this is how I'm going to be.
Well, my early career was in furniture sales. And so I was specifying furniture drawings, and I guess I observed or saw the way that salespeople in general, as a stereotype, right, did business. And I decided I did not want to do that. So I did not want to pressure people for a monetary goal. That's never been a priority for me.
So what is it instead?
Relationship. How does everyone feel when they've completed a project? To me, that's success, right? Do you all want to work together again? Do you want to hang out on the weekend? Do you want to get your kids together? That's more important. I think the rest will follow after that.
The majority of us work in for-profit businesses. Do you feel that is counterintuitive? Do you feel it aligns?
Absolutely. Nope, does not align. It certainly doesn't align with the position I'm in right now. But I'm fortunate enough to work for a entrepreneurial company, and they believe in the way that I do things, and they support me.
So let's talk about that for a second. So obviously there's a belief that you can't put relationships and people first in a for-profit organization, or at least a stereotype or some sort of, I could hear it in your voice, John. It was very much, that is not normal. And you absolutely agreed with that. So
sure did.
All right, let's go into that a little bit, because everybody is in business to make money in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. But what you just said is, when you do put the relationships and the people first, obviously you can be just as, if not more, successful.
Yep. But
it's still shunned, or it's still looked at with the side eye. So what's the disconnect here?
The disconnect is that I don't really care what everyone else thinks. And I'm laughing because a lot of people get shocked by that answer, but it's the truth. If it's not intuitive to me, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't affect me how other people think about it.
So all right, we got to go down that a little bit, because you are like, when you talk, you have the accent, you have the warm voice, you have the personality, and now you're telling me that you really don't care what other people think. So I'm like, wait, what? Let's go down this road a little bit. So you have this really, really, what I'm hearing, and you have this really strong internal compass that points you in a direction eventually that says this is the right thing to do.
Yes.
And so that is when you say you don't care. It's like, once you make the decision, or once it resonates with you, and if you believe it's right and it's true and it's ethical and all those things, because we're not talking about a whole bunch of devious stuff here. We're talking about actual, this is, let's back up. Okay, so Cherie's a good person. Let's just make that clear for everybody.
Right. Yes.
So starting from that point of reference, when whether it's a business decision, personal decision, employee decision, whatever it may be, once you decide it's right, that's what you're going to do, because your belief system kind of kicks in and reinforces that and says, this is what we're going to do. I know it's right. It may not be accepted amongst everybody, but that's fine with me. I'm okay with that.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so you realize this is a bit of a unique perspective.
I don't, because it's all I know.
So many of us, we do. So let's just talk about the process. Put all that aside for a second. Let's just talk about the process of making decisions. Let's go on that for a second. You had a story about your kid getting shoes, and I thought this was wonderful. So please, you got it.
So when my child was about 9 or 10, we were struggling to get out the door because he was trying to pick between two different types of shoes. And I told him, if there's one thing in life you learn from me, it's that you make a decision and you go with it and you deal with the consequences after. Whatever those are, you can handle it. It's okay. And that's how I That's how I operate. I mean, I do all the research, I gather all the information, I talk to all the people, and then make a decision and I go with it. And if something comes out of it, I deal with it. I accept it.
So let's go to John.
He's dying to ask a question.
So when it gets squirrely, right? You make a decision, the team's moving forward, and there's fallout.
Mhm.
Then what?
Take a deep
What
breath.
does dealing with it look like?
Take a deep breath. Don't react immediately and just gather all the information about what went wrong. If we're at fault, admit you're at fault and find a solution before you bring it up. Find a way to make it better.
That sounds so altruistic in a way.
Okay.
So I want to be
what I heard was Cherie doesn't care. So, right, Kyle, she's not going to care. We're going to take care of it, right?
Yeah, we're going to take care of it. It'll be okay. It's all good.
Do you get internal churn? Like this the anxiety? I mean, I feel a lot of folks get this, but there's this self-assurance that's coming out of you.
Yeah.
That's just like, no, guys, the decision's the decision, right? Not negatively, but
No.
hey, let's keep the team moving forward.
Well, honestly, I think I've been through so many traumatic events in my life in general. And I don't know that I want to reveal all of those on a podcast, but I personally have been through a lot of horrific things in my life. And relationship is the true key to success. That's how you know if you're successful. And if everyone is okay and everyone wants to work together again or wants to see each other again, then I feel like it was successful. And if the way to do that is to do what's true to you and take responsibility and find a solution, it's pretty simple.
So there's a lot of perspective there in that wisdom to know that when you look back, because what I just wrote down is you have spent enough energy worrying, considering, thinking about things that ultimately just in the big picture don't matter. And now
Absolutely.
You're professing the same thing. Your team's going, look, even if it's the wrong decision, at least we're moving forward.
Yes.
And if it is wrong, we'll deal with it. And deal with it doesn't mean I'm going to fire you.
No. We'll work together. We'll figure it out. Something mentor taught me, I don't know, early in my career was, I remember I was panicking over some furniture and how it went together. And she said, look, when you evaluate a problem, decide, is it going to affect you in the next 5 years? How much time you spend on it. So if it's something that can be resolved with a replacement part or replacement piece in a couple of weeks, probably doesn't warrant a lot of stress. John.
I love that. I mean, a lot of, right? So I kind of love where you're coming from, and I totally respect, your history, your experiences. And I think this is important for a lot of people to hear that, your understanding of consequences, you have a different threshold.
Yes.
Right? So there are a lot of folks who ruminate, who get caught up in that churn, the anxiety of, what's going to happen as a result of making this decision, and how much time do we have to spend? Are we making the right decision, right? And doing all that. And you already said, right? We heard you. It's not like you don't do the homework to figure out, and you're just like, that we're going to do.
No, it's not random.
No, it's not that. It's informed, but still that's really a very interesting perspective of consequences. It's not going to be that bad.
No. You also need to realize, what do you have control over exactly? What is within your control? And will it affect you in 5 years? Those two questions can really help you make a decision quickly.
Well, it also can help alleviate the internal dialogue and the anxiety that comes with whatever you're amping yourself up about.
Yes.
I mean, you
True.
see, it doesn't matter how old you are or how much experience you have. People still get spun up about certain things. We were just doing
Yep.
one the other day, and we had to present a concept budget to an internal client. And I ended up telling my team member at the time, I said, it doesn't matter how many times we do this, you still get a little nervous because you never
Yeah.
know how they're going to react. It
Sure.
could be anything from okay to wow, I didn't think it was going to be that low, or are you kidding me? And no matter, like I said, no matter how many times you do, you still feel a little anxious, but you still go forward with it. And as long as you can have that conversation, like you said,
Yeah.
in 5 years, this 15-minute conversation won't matter.
Right.
But it was still worth, and I could see, because even I was surprised, and I was like, I still get nervous about it, but here we go.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's human nature to get nervous whenever you're presenting something. It's a vulnerable moment to a group of people, right? That's human nature. I mean, I get nervous presenting to a group of people even though I don't really care. So it's a very strange argument in my head to do that. When you realize, like, as long as I'm prepared, I mean, and this takes years of practice, right? I can handle whatever's out of my control in a situation like that. That's the confidence that you have.
That makes perfect sense. And
Do you find that you have to? I mean, is there like a mantra you're having to remind your teammates who
Yes,
may not operate the same way you do,
absolutely.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it has taken years of practice to get to this point, right? This is not something I just was born with. It's something I've learned over time. I mean, I've been in the industry for over 25 years, so I've had a lot of opportunity to test it out and continue to refine it.
No, I mean, it's interesting to me. I still say there are a lot of people who are not wired the way that you are,
Yeah,
right?
well,
And just the difference is good, right? I mean, it's interesting to understand where everyone comes from, and that we all have a different
yeah,
lens as we approach the world.
no, I want to back up 1 second, because when I was talking before about, and I had to point out that let's make sure everyone listening knows that Cherie's a good person. I think everybody is a good person. The way that people who are that, I want to say confident, but there's this level of confidence that comes across in this, and there's a level of stubbornness as well that can come across. And there are people who don't have the self-awareness where those two come across as more weaponry, whether
yep,
it's their
I can see
position
that.
or their title or their power struggle, the politics, the dynamics. And so they use this and they leverage that. And I think it's a heck of a lot easier, for sure, to do it that way, because it takes less time, and you ultimately you interact, you dictate, you tell people, you force people, I know what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. And when you were describing how you treat employees like clients, and we were pulling that apart in the beginning, it changes that into a much different interaction, person
Yes.
to person.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. I think getting to know those you work with, figuring out what makes them tick. And also, something you said, John, that made me think is I haven't always been supported in the way that I do business. I've been tolerated. To be in a place where I am supported in the way that I cultivate relationships and build the practice is a different perspective altogether. It gives me more confidence. If you
That's
don't have
important.
that support, you may not have, I mean, it would be hard to have the confidence.
I want to, gosh, it's like Kyle, like if you hear these nuggets that come out of things, how do you feel like, the way you show up with your colleagues, treating them as clients, right? Prioritizing the relationship component. Have you noticed what kind of impact you have on them and how they respond to you? Do
Well,
you have examples of,
it's
what does
kind of
that
hard
look
to
like?
answer because I don't know how they react to other people to
Sure.
compare it to. So I don't know how to answer the question. I do know, I mean, I have people under me that report to me that have told me they would follow me somewhere else, right? I think respecting that person as a person and knowing them personally helps that relationship. I don't honestly, I don't know how other people do it. So I wouldn't know how to compare it.
No, I get that part for sure, right? I think it's, some of that's really interesting to the more we kind of look at that lens and understand how we're showing up in the world, right? You're coming through very purposeful, which I love. And then it's just kind of some of that what gets reflected back at us. So even statements like that, yeah, Cherie, I'd go with you wherever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's helpful, right? It's telling you that, what you're doing is having some impact.
I mean, I do have one story I can tell you. We had a junior designer come on board and ramped up very quickly, very smart, very intuitive, missed something on a RFP for furniture and was terrified, right? Young designer called a meeting with me, was scared to death, and I could tell she was nervous. And I said, let's just take a minute and let's just breathe, because I don't know what you're going to tell me. Whatever it is, it can't be that bad. And so we did that. And then she's like, okay, I'm just going to spill it. And so she did. And I said, well, let's talk. Let's talk about the whole picture. Let's talk about all the things, not just this one incident, but let's talk about everything that led up to this moment. And it was an easy fix. It was an easy, look, I screwed up. I left this off. And here's how we fix it. And it was gone. And she came back to me a week later and she said, so glad that it went the way it went, because in the past, people I've worked for would have exploded and yelled and reacted instead of help me find a solution. So that's an example that I have.
And it's so hard to do in the moment too, because especially it's nice when we talk about it in calm times. That,
Yes,
when we make a
right.
mistake, we're all going to come together and we'll work at it. We'll figure out how to overcome the mistake. And then we'll talk about how we're going to prevent it from happening next time. And we all go, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. And then when it actually happens, very few people do what you described.
Yes.
Very few people will say, I see that you're worked up. Let's pause for a moment.
Right. Yes,
But
you're right.
of course, you're like, but why wouldn't anyone do that? I know that's the right thing to do, and that's how you should do it. And so why doesn't everyone do it that way? Well, like I said, I mean, you've been through so much that you recognize your own emotions aren't getting triggered in that moment. You're not taking in how anxious they are. You're not playing off of them at all.
No. I also have learned through the years that I am not responsible for other people's happiness. So that, honestly, that's one in the last probably 8 years or so that I have worked on a lot, as I'm not responsible for other people's happiness. I'm not responsible for their behavior and their actions. I'm only responsible for mine. So knowing that, and you go into a situation with somebody who's very angry and upset, if you can go in knowing you can't control that, you can approach it in a more collaborative mindset. And it's a practice. It's not something that comes naturally.
Which part? Knowing that you can't change other people?
Yes.
Yeah. That is so true. I watch my son my oldest is 17, and I watch him struggle in so many things trying to do exactly that. And if you've been able to teach your son how to not change other people.
Haven't done it. Nope. Not going to say nope. I'd be writing books. Are you kidding me? No, this kid is so stubborn and so 15 and so not liking his parents, So no. I don't know that anybody's figured that out.
No, but I think
you wait about 5 or 6 years. That's the solution. To the
That's too long. I need answers now.
Yeah. But let's go back to where we started on the for-profit side. And so, and not even just for-profit, but just in business in general.
Yes.
It is human nature, I think, for us to believe that we're right and to project our rightness onto others to get them to see how right we are. Because if they can see how right we are, then they will also feel as good as we do about being right, even though they're wrong. And so we try to change people, do it this way, try that, try this. And and some people, it's not as strong as I put it. Sometimes it's, I'm being helpful. I'm helping you see where you're going wrong.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, which can be also just as bad. But like you said, at some point you realize, and I say you realize, I don't think at some point, I think it takes a tremendous amount of soul searching experience and truly bettering yourself to understand what you stated so clearly of, I don't try to change other people. I'm not responsible for their happiness. I can only be who I am and
Yes.
improve myself and see if any of that, now I'm going to add some words to it, see if any of that actually rolls off onto the people around me in an influential way, because they see what I do and how I behave and how I treat them. And perhaps they will choose to do some of those things with others around them.
That's true.
That's awesome. The amount of patience that you have, and which is funny, because when we first started talking, it sounded like you didn't have any. You're just like, nope, I know what I'm doing. I'm making decisions. Here we go. But when you uncover this, and I would wonder for those listening, how many people you work with or are in your family or in your neighborhood or in any group that you're in, how many people come across in one way. But if you take a few minutes to really listen, to really look, to really, and put yourself aside, your own judgments aside, and go, what's actually happening here? Who would actually be around you? It'd be fascinating.
Yeah, I agree.
That's so cool. No, I appreciate you being here. This has been a lot of fun and has gone all ways that never expected, which is really awesome.
That's the best part.
Absolutely.
That is the best part. Yeah, but I didn't think we were going to quite end up here in this conversation, but I love it, and so thankful that you're part of the Ripple Intent community and helping it grow and just building it to make it what it is.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for being here with us, Cherie.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Listeners, you can find us online at the website rippleintent.org. Find all of us at on LinkedIn. Connect with us. Reach out. We love just connecting with the community as a whole and building it. Come to a Ripple Intent event in a city near you. We're all over the country, meeting every month in some place that I'm sure is nearby. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.